All right, the live stream is up on YouTube, so you guys can go ahead and get started.
All right, we'll get started. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Sharonville Board of Zoning Appeals via online. If you're not taking the opportunity to sign in this evening, I don't know how we're doing that, but I'm assuming Sarah or John, you have a record of those who are on the screen. So if you show up as a participant, we'll assume that you are signed in this evening. We'll dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance. For those of you who are testifying this evening, I'm going to need you to either raise your hand using the raise hand button or verbally say yes to take the oath, because this is a quasi-judicial board. So if you're testifying this evening on behalf of a case or responding to a case, do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you're about to give this evening should be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right. So the first item on the agenda was submitted by Greg Kelly and his wife Maggie on 10932 Aztec Court in Sharonville, Ohio, zone R1B in the single-family residential area. Greg and Maggie are requesting a variance from the Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1125.09 and 1131.05 to install a front porch 24 feet from the front yard right-of-way in the R1B zoning district. Sharonville Code 1135.05 states that the minimum front yard setback in the R1B zoning district is 30 feet from the right-of-way. The applicant's house was built 29 feet from the front right-of-way. Section 1125.09 of the Sharonville Code states that in the R1B zoning district, an open air front porch is permitted to be installed 6 feet into the minimum setback, allowing a front porch to be installed 24 feet from the right-of-way. This allowance only allows for open air structure and does not include enclosed structure. So the applicant had notification letters sent to all property owners within 100 feet. I don't know who the attendee is. Theoretically, he could be one of the neighbors from 100 feet, but the city did not receive any calls on behalf of this property. The applicant sent a letter. I will not read the letter to you, but you all should have received the letter previous to the meeting outlining all the reasons why the variance should be granted in view of the applicant, mainly stating that the property was already a non-conforming use. The porch would not encroach any further than an open air structure, and that the porch would be an architectural improvement that would protect the property from weather and elements, and add security to package delivery and curb appeal to the neighborhood. This is an aerial view of the property. The applicant has submitted a picture of what the property currently looks like, and then an example of what the front porch could look like. This is not exactly the front porch because you can tell the color and style of the building is a little different, but this is a style in which they are requesting to build. Here is a elevation plan of what they are requesting to install. As you can see, it still has a similar roof with the fencing and the poles, or with the railing and the columns. And it is only 5 feet in front of their property or their house. This is a site plan of where they're requesting to install the front porch. So in summary, when staff reviewed the application, we found that granting a variance would relieve hardship and help preserve a legitimate use to the property. The property has a special circumstance because the property was non-conforming, and that it is a slight variation from section 1133.05, which would allow open air structures to be built 6 feet into the right-of-way. The staff also did find that the property is not unique in the sense that it is on a straight street that doesn't have any curvature, so there's not a special circumstance to the setback other than being 29 feet from the property. So if the board were to consider approving the application, we just ask that all improvements be maintained as part of the variance approval. And we want to remind the applicant that a building approval and a variance is not the same thing, so they would still need to file an application for a permit. So if Greg or Maggie want to answer any questions for the board or have any additional comments that I did not cover in relation to the variance, you're free to speak now. You are on mute though, I see that.
I don't have any questions or comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Hey, this is for Sarah and John. So as part of the package, the second quote unquote reason that's on the front page of that request states that section 1125.09D allows for open roofed porches to project 6 feet into the front yard, but they cannot be any closer than 24 feet from the right of way. But the applicant's only proposing a 5-foot porch in the front yard, and they're still within that 24-foot boundary. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Their property or their house was built 29 feet from the right of way. So going 5 feet in, going 5 feet in is still the 24 feet from the right of way, which they would be permitted if it was an open roof structure.
Okay. I've got no questions for the applicant. I think it's fairly straightforward. To me, it's not unusual to have a front porch on the house like this. It's open on 3 sides, so that does provide or prevent the visual barrier of a solid wall being constructed. In my opinion, I think it's a nice architectural addition to the house, and it complements it. I think it's also nice because it's inviting where they could sit outside and kind of keep an eye on the street. It's kind of a trend now, and it's not unusual. Just my opinion. I'm curious to see what the rest of the board thinks about this. Remember, unmute yourself.
I agree with you, Paul. I think it'd be a great addition to that house and add value to the neighborhood.
I agree as well.
All right, so if are there any questions from those in the quote unquote audience, other than the applicant, that you have for the applicant on this variance as presented this evening? Hearing none or seeing none, Councilman Tankersley, do you have any comment on the variance as presented this evening?
No, I think I agree with you with everybody liking enjoying their time outside on their porch. I think it'd be a nice improvement, not only to the house, but also the neighborhood.
Any other discussion from the board this evening? All right, do I have a recommendation on the variance as presented with the staff recommendations to be included that would identify that building permit approval will be required prior to any construction, and that this board's approval is only reducing the setback of the porch itself or the front yard itself and does not guarantee the building approval, and that number 2, all improvements and work indicated on the construction drawings shall be approved as a part of the front yard setback variance and must be installed and maintained in good repair and condition and replaced as necessary to remain in compliance with the approved variance. So do I have a motion on that variance as presented?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, thank you for the first and the second. And with that, Mr. Creech, would you please call the roll?
Motion to approve with conditions, Mr. Coulter,
Yes.
Mr. Eisen,
Yes.
Mr. Eggenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Sasser,
Yes.
and Mr. Pernick.
Yes.
That your variance has been approved and you can work with the building department in order to get your permit approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg and Maggie. You're free to leave the webinar whenever you feel like it. Have a great
Great.
day. Thanks.
Thanks, you too.
So the second item on the agenda was submitted by Tyler Parker of Storms Property LLC at 3385 Creek Road in Sharonville, Ohio, This property is located in the Central Business District. And for those familiar with Sharonville, which would be all of you as residents, the property is the former Game On Fitness building, the purple and white church-like building. Tyler Parker of Storm Properties LLC is requesting a use and parking variance for to allow a public assembly of a 50 to 75 seat church in the Central Business District. This would require a variance from Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1135.02 D1 and 1135.02 C5 and 1151.04. Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1131.02 states that churches are only permitted in the public facility zone district. Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1135.02 D1 and 1135.02 C5 states that assembly uses, meeting halls, and other social, fraternal, or sports and recreational establishments are permitted in the Central Business District, provided that they're in an enclosed building and sufficiently sound. Taking into consideration RLUIPA, the city could consider a church a similar use as a public assembly. And also related to parking, Sharonville Codified Ordinance 1151.04 states that 3 parking spaces are required for every seat in a public assembly use. As a church that anticipates having 75 people in the congregation, they would be required to have 25 parking spots. The applicant has, originally I thought they had 16 standard size parking spots. Tyler had mentioned in his letter 17, so I'm not sure if it is 16.6 like he said originally, or if it's 16 or 17. But either way, he does not have the 25 parking spots. We have sent a letter to all property owners within 100 feet. We did receive one call. That will be on the screen after the applicant's letter. But the letter we received from the applicant basically stated that due to the style of the building, after 4 months of marketing the property, only churches have really reached out about this space. The property is very open and wide, accommodating to a church or some sort of assembly use, and that there are parking spaces nearby and residential areas nearby. From the property owner, we received a call from Jonathan McNulty of 11076 Main Street. That property is located slightly off the screen over here. I don't know if you can see my arrow pointing. But the property owner inquired if the applicant was going to pave the remaining green space on the property to obtain additional parking. It was his preference that the board did not require or have that happen because he wanted to maintain the green space on the property. He also wanted to note that it was his preference for the church to have or utilize on-street or off-street parking before they utilize the on-street parking, which is available because there's limited on-street parking. So, so just as a frame of reference, there is a parking lot for Angela's DJ's Barbershop and Ameristop. There's public parking shown in green. The applicant has parking shown in the reddish color. And then there's parking for PNC, which has opposite business hours. And then there's parking for Game On Fitness below the church or the property, which is requesting to become a church. So this is a view of what the property looks like. As you can see, there's parking along the side of the building along Main Street, and there's green space in front of the building. And this is the building. Inside the building, it is set up for a former yoga studio and fitness classes. So it is very open spaced. So when reviewing the application, staff noted that granting a variance could relieve hardship and preserve a legitimate use to the property as an assembly use. And due to the adaptability of the building and the shape of the building, it would relieve hardship for finding a use for the property. However, when reviewing the application, staff did note that the applicant's parking lot is not unique to downtown. Many businesses have voiced a concern about parking. While the property has the largest use on Sundays, non-peak hours of operation. It would be important to note that there is most likely going to be some events that would require weekday parking, such as functions at the church. So parking agreements could be required. Shared use parking agreements or parking lease agreements could resolve some conflict and make a more seamless parking experience for downtown visitors when parking demands fluctuate. So the city wanted to note that the applicant would still require a building approval and certificate of occupancy prior to using the building if the board approves the variance today. And they wanted to recommend 2 considerations for the board's approval. The first one is that the applicant would maintain some sort of parking agreement equal to or greater than the assembly use of their property, or for them to maintain, or for them to obtain a valid certificate of occupancy, and that they maintain the use of the property and keep it in good repair as necessary as part of the use variance. So I see Tyler here on the meeting. If you would like to add any additional comments related to the property or reasons for your request, you are free to address the board.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. You did a really good job. I don't have too much to add. I think she summed it up really, really well. The building is definitely not conducive to quote unquote an office. And I realize that the zoning that is there now is a little more broad than just an office, but to find, let's say, a Game On Fitness for that space just seems to be almost impossible. It's such a tight niche. And so we've had like the letter said, we had a lot of churches reach out, and I do think it's a really great space for that. I do think it would bring a lot of business to the CBD. And as I understand the zoning regulations, if the building has some kind of restrictive use based on the design and the functionality of it, that's kind of the basis on how we can ask for a variance. And I do think it does have that. With that said, if the sticking point is parking and, we have a max occupancy of 48 people, I'm not opposed to finding a church that wants to occupy the space that only would have 48 members. So, we're fairly flexible at this point. We do have a tenant that's interested, but like I said, we've had a lot of interest in this category. So, we're open to working with you guys. We definitely want to do everything we can to bring business to the downtown area there. I graduated from Princeton in 2000 myself, so I have a lot of interest in this area. So, I'm curious to see what the board thinks.
Well, I'll start off. So originally, obviously this building was a church. Downtown parking is unique to the rest of Sharonville, the requirements, but it's not unique to other traditional downtowns as a whole. Downtowns are meant to be walkable, mostly, buildings built to the sidewalk with public parking, on-street parking, and ancillary parking in some of the surrounding areas. But, in my opinion, you can't sufficiently fit 48 people in there with those parking requirements, but to require you to add additional parking on site and get rid of the green space, that's not something that I want to see. I would be interested to see if you could get some type of agreement adjacent to at least gain a few more spaces, but that's not a major sticking point for me in this variance request. And I know there are a lot of businesses that raise questions about the parking downtown, and yet they use the parking downtown as well. So to me, that's kind of a non-issue. The city can still look for more parking, but your use really isn't abusing, I think, the parking requirements as some other uses may be, with large groups of people coming in at one point in time for several hours and taking up considerable spaces. And I frequent downtown quite a bit, and I've really never been down there at any point in time where I couldn't find a parking space anywhere. And that's eating lunch in one of the restaurants during the day, or during the evening, or during some other type of event like the night out in Sharonville when we had that. So in my opinion, with I'd be curious to see what the other board members think about requiring more parking as a condition for this variance. But I'm not necessarily opposed with pushing the variance through without that requirement. So what do the other board members think?
So I'm gonna go ahead and jump on that. I agree with Paul. I can't tell you how many times that we have these things come up when it comes to a building and we start putting stipulations on parking. And I think the only time that I've ever been downtown Sharonville where it's just impossible to get through is on the car show Sundays in April, which is now in July this year, correct? So, and other than that, I don't see, I'm not going to vote for having to have a additional parking overlap because, you know, on a Sunday, you know, there's a public lot behind Cliffs. That's, I mean, if somebody wants to walk it or, you know, a husband needs to drop off a wife and some kids and then go park over there. I mean, there's public lots. I think we saw that in a meeting a few months back when we actually were all getting together, that there's enough public lots around Sharonville that these guys can park in to get additional parking without having to put it into, you know, make it hard on Tyler to get another church in here because of that. So that's just my opinion. So, you know, I'll let somebody else take over from here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Andy. That was one of my concerns too, was the Kiwanis Car Show. When will services be held at the church?
So they mentioned, you know, kind of the normal time, Sundays, maybe like a Wednesday night, you know, Bible school or whatnot. So really kind of the traditional hours, you know, they haven't laid out a complete program yet, but that's kind of what they're thinking, just kind of the traditional church times.
Are they aware of the Kiwanis Car Show? And because that does fill up that bank parking lot there fast.
Yeah, I haven't spoken specifically about that, but I know that they are familiar with the area. But I'm not 100% sure. I can't answer that for sure.
Well, I kind of agree with Andy. We got those parking spaces down there, and I don't want to see the green space lost, so I don't have any objections to this.
And let me say too that, you know, eliminating green space was never part of our plan. You know, that's, you know, honestly, I don't even think there's a way to do that logistically. So even if there was, that's not our intention. You know, we don't want to delete green space.
I agree with the comments that were made as well, and would agree with that green space not being developed. So.
On a side note, the city wouldn't have even allowed the green space. I believe John can verify, but I don't think we would let front yard parking in the central business district. That was just what the neighbor had called and wanted to make sure that it was on the radar, that he didn't want them to build more parking and he didn't want them to take his on-street parking. But I don't think there's anything the board can do to specifically prohibit him from parking on the street, because on-street parking is open to anyone. The resident just wanted to let us know that we would prefer that they parked in a parking lot.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Do you know if they have plans for bingo night like some churches do?
They have not said that to me. I don't know if that's part of their plan. I'm not sure. They haven't said anything about that. You know, and we talked a little bit about what they want to do there. So I don't think so, but I'm not 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Just one thing I was gonna mention is that, you know, there's another school just down the street that does festivals every year too. And I think that also is a parking challenge, I think. So I don't know if festivals include in this. Any idea on that?
Are you talking about big bikes?
Yes.
Yeah, their festivals usually Friday evening, Saturday evening, and Sunday afternoon. So I don't think that would interfere with a normal church.
I think what Tom was asking was, is this church open to having any type of festivals? I would think that based on the size of their lot, they couldn't even hold a festival.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I mean, most festivals are held in the parking lot, and I don't, you know, that's, again, they didn't say that specifically, but I can't imagine that that's the case. You know, most most churches don't. I think you kind of have to have the logistical space for that, and they definitely don't have that there. So I don't believe that's their plan.
Any questions from the board, comments?
John, real quick, if they wanted to have a festival, like say right there in between Maine and Reading, would they have to apply for a permit to do that anyways?
You mean like festival on the street?
Yeah.
What is, on Creek Road?
Yeah, on Creek.
Well,
yeah.
to
That would-
close the street, yes, they'd probably need either Jim Lucas or city council approval to do that, just for a
Okay.
short period. But yeah,
Okay.
that something like that would, even now, whenever some organization holds a festival, I know Jim sends the request to the police department, the fire department, different departments, so they can comment on it before it's approved. So everyone would have to go through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from those of you who are online and not a part of the variance request? No? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. So what does the board think about proposing this variance with staff recommendations 2, 3, and 4? So we would be removing the maintaining of a valid parking agreement equal or greater to the assembly use of their property to maintain that valid certificate of occupancy. But we would include that the building permit approval would be required prior to any construction, that a certificate of occupancy permit is required for occupancy of the building, and that all improvement and work as indicated as part of this use variance must be installed and maintained in good condition and repair and replaced as necessary to remain in compliance with the variance. Is there any objection by the board to remove the parking agreement staff recommendation?
No, I would not.
No objection by me.
Okay, so hearing none, do I have a motion on this variance as presented with the 3 staff recommendations that are outlined in the packet, and that would be items 2, 3, and 4?
I agree.
Not me.
Is that a first?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a first and we have a second. Mr. Creech, would you please call the roll?
John, you're muted.
Motion to approve with the amended conditions. Mr. Coulter,
Because this site was originally a church, and because of its downtown location, which is restricted in parking anyway, and because the use itself could be completed with a valid occupancy use permit, I vote yes.
Mr. Eisen,
I vote yes.
Mr. Eggenberger,
Yes.
Mr. Sasser,
Yes.
Mr. Pernick.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Parker, with that, your variance has been approved. So you should work with the building department in order to get your permits.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, one other matter before the board. So we kind of skipped ahead of a few things between roll call. I need a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was on March 11th, 2020.
I approve.
Second.
Thank you for that. Is there any other business to bring before the board this evening?
Nope.
All right, John and Gina and Sarah, thank you so much for all of your hard work in putting the packet together. I like the detail of the packets. It's a lot better than what we've had in under past administration. So I do thank you for all the time and effort you put into that and for putting this Zoom meeting together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
All right, do John or Sarah, do you have any other business that we need to discuss this evening?
Nope, our next meeting, it started at 7 o'clock. It's for planning commission. You guys are free to join if you'd like. We will be talking about the downtown streetscape loop. So with that, we are going to sign off and start our meeting that we're 5 minutes late for.
Okay, and for the board members, get on Sharonville 2030 and fill out the zoning surveys.
Hey,
All right, I have motion to adjourn.
Right here, buddy.
Yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
See you next month.
Have a good one.
Guys, stay well, stay safe.
You too.
You too.